My cat Freddie loves to be brushed and cuddled. But stirring up his cat allergens meant sneezing and itchy eyes. Then I found Purina One Live Clear. It's cat food that reduced the major allergen and my suffering in as little as 21 days. Now, we feel closer than ever. If you have issues with cat allergens, you really need to try Purina One Live Clear.
Try new Purina One Live Clear today. Purina One, a difference from day one.
When you see that your friend has brought a live chicken to a movie theater to
The live
release,
chicken was, that was a little bit much.
which actually happened.
Perhaps a step too far there.
Maybe a bit much on that one, yeah.
Welcome to the Ankler Podcast. I'm Elaine Lowe of the Series Business Newsletter here in Los Angeles on Thursday, April 17th, where Netflix has just dropped its results for the quarter, kicking off earnings season for Hollywood. As you know, the streaming service has stopped reporting subscriber numbers quarter to quarter, but we're going to do a close read here of their results to tell you what the spring and summer have in store for the company and the media business. And what would earnings season be without Sean McNulty, author of the Wake Up newsletter, who I understand has also come bearing a new Netflix pop quiz, no doubt designed to befuddle and besmirch my good name.
That's exactly what I do the podcast for, Elaine. You're exactly right. My only reason I come by every week. The banter's nice, Elaine, the commentary, but, that's really why I do it.
But the ritual humiliation is what you're here for.
Yeah, that's the core interest here, yeah, for sure.
Okay, as long as we have our priorities straight.
Exactly.
But first, we're going to talk about the Minecraft movie, which has grossed well over $500 million worldwide and sent TikTok aflame with videos of teens and tweens throwing popcorn in movie theaters at any mention of the phrase chicken jockey, which is why I'm glad we're also joined here today by our meme queen, Natalie Jarvie, author of the Like and Subscribe newsletter that covers the creator economy. Hey, Natalie.
I am honored to be the Ankler's meme queen. I don't know. I think maybe that needs to go in my TikTok bio or something.
I mean, it's also like a pretty low bar. I don't have TikTok. Sean, do you even have TikTok?
I will never download TikTok to my phone.
You are the default winner, Natalie.
Yeah.
It's the only person among the three of us who has TikTok.
You should all be on TikTok.
I'll get there. But listeners, if you don't know what I mean when I say chicken jockey, no, I am not having a stroke mid-pod. It is something Jack Black's character yells during a fight sequence where this little zombie dude plops on top of a chicken and fights Jason Momoa in the ring. Have either of you seen this movie yet? I saw it last weekend with my kids, so I know full well what a chicken jockey is now, even though I haven't played the game.
Yeah, I'm a no on that. Natalie, have you seen it?
I haven't. My kids are too young. So, Elaine, I think you're our Minecraft expert here.
Wow. Look at that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Default Minecraft queen here. Okay, I'll take it.
Yeah.
Were either of you familiar with this phrase chicken jockey, though, like before like a week ago?
I would have thought something entirely different if you give me that phrase. So I'm going to say not in terms of Minecraft. But Natalie, are you a Minecraft person? Do you understand this world at all? The terminology, the Easter eggs and everything? Or are you not? Give me some help here.
I'm sorry, you guys, but I just I spend a lot of time on the internet. Minecraft is not one of the corners of the internet I have spent a lot of time in. I do suspect as my children get older, I will probably start to spend more time there. Yeah. But this was a whole new world for me. So I have been, seeing a lot of these videos on TikTok. So I at least am familiarizing myself with the Minecraft universe that way.
Yeah. Elaine, are your kids into it, Elaine, or no? Are they players of the game or no?
Okay. So you know how there are all these stories out now that are like, oh, who could have predicted that Minecraft was going to be such a big hit?
You were on it. You were even this podcast. You said this.
Okay, the one time, which is why I'm going to lord it over all of you for forever. Yeah. Because unlike The Flash, I'm actually right about this one. No, I mean, listen, my kids are both elementary school aged. Neither of them plays Minecraft.
Okay.
Because I am a bad, strict mom who doesn't allow video games in the house. But they're still like all about Minecraft. Like I have to buy them like Minecraft clothing. My 6-year-old had a Minecraft themed birthday party. It permeated the popular culture, at least with a certain elementary school set, to a degree where I was like, oh, okay, none of us plays this, but we're all totally going to go see the movie.
Right.
Elaine, I did see the St. Patrick's Day cake that you fashioned into a Minecraft cake, which was beautiful and very impressive. So
thank you, Baskin Robbins, for the St. Patty's Day ice cream cake, which I got after St. Patty's Day.
The best kind of time to get it. Yeah. Is there a leprechaun in Minecraft? No. Okay, that doesn't really know. That doesn't.
No. I bought the Minecraft decorations separately and then plonked them on top. And then my kids were like, when I brought it to the party, the kids were like, there's no rainbows or pot of gold in Minecraft. I was like, there are now.
There are now. Yeah, exactly. No chicken jockeys on the cake, so oh well.
No.
All right.
But our own Matthew Frank did write a pretty good story on this phenomenon of like chicken jockeys and just like the kids going nuts in these movie theaters over these memes. Natalie, like, why do you think this movie took off the way it did on social? Is there like any rhyme or reason to what hits, what does or doesn't go viral?
You know, Matthew's story was really wonderful. I want to start by saying that, while also saying that I think people are all making this way more complicated than they need to.
Oh, thank you. Okay, that was my takeaway too, Natalie. Please go on.
Listen, kids are spending a lot of time on the internet. We know that. They play Minecraft, they're watching YouTube, they're on TikTok, they're Snapchatting with their friends. But at the end of the day, they are still subject to FOMO like the rest of us. And I do still think that there's a desire to connect in the real world. And when you see that your friend went to a movie and had a great experience and people were throwing popcorn and yelling things at the screen, why wouldn't you want to go and have that experience too? I think it's as simple as that.
When you see that your friend has brought a live chicken to a movie theater to
The live
release,
chicken was that was a little bit much.
which actually happened.
Perhaps a step too far there.
Maybe a bit much on that one, yeah. But we saw like the Gentle Minions. This falls in the same category to me. The people singing it wicked, like this is just in that same iteration of these things we've kind of seen. Is maybe the chicken is a little more extreme, and the throwing of popcorn. But that's just the nature of this particular film. But I don't know that it's like, oh my God, this has never happened before. I mean, we just had in the past 2 years 2 pretty good examples of that.
My real concern now is that what we're going to see is a lot of movie studios trying to replicate
too
this.
hard, yeah.
Exactly. And then it's not going to feel authentic. What worked about this is that it did happen organically. And I think that the TikToks, the social videos that you saw, their popularity, that was all very organic and very real.
Also, the movie was just really good. Like,
Elaine's
as
a big
somebody
fan.
who
Yeah, I know.
I was not expecting to roll into a 10 a.m. viewing on a Sunday of a movie and come out like cry laughing.
Okay.
It was really funny. I mean, it's directed by Jared Hess, who did Napoleon Dynamite. It's very like in-jokey, very tongue-in-cheek, very like aware of its own absurdity. And I was like, okay, this movie is actually hilarious.
Yeah.
So there's also something to be said for good writing.
Totally.
That's the key. If you want to have a kids movie that works, you have to get the parents.
4-quadrant, yeah.
Well, for the rest of you who can't get that lava chicken tune out of your head, read Matthew's story and all of our coverage at theankler.com. Sean and Natalie, if you go see it, you'll also get Jack Black singing Lava Chicken stuck in your heads as well.
Noted.
But moving on, today is all about Netflix. We're recording our pod this week mere minutes after watching that earnings call. So you're getting both sage analysis and the hottest of takes. Netflix, 700 million individuals across 300 million subscriber households globally. It topped Wall Street expectations. Let's start with you, Sean. You said this morning in the Wake Up that watching Netflix's operating margin would be key, and it exceeded expectations, yeah?
Yeah, this is kind of like profit margin. It's, how much money they're making on their revenue per se. And, they're projected 28.2%. It came up at 31.7, a boring number in a sense. And revenue came in, a good about $100 million plus over their projection, and the stock so far, I think it's up 2.53% after hours, which isn't much for anything. Wall Street was expecting them to beat their numbers, and they did. So it wasn't, from in terms of a numbers point of view, not that exciting.
But also because we don't get quarterly subscriber updates anymore.
Right, that's out of the question now. So we don't even get that pop or whatever might have been before. Netflix just had price hikes, of course, in Q1, which were kind of mid-quarter, so that will kind of play out through the rest of the year. It's moving along swimmingly. It's like this is kind of no surprises, but solid results all around. Net profit was $2.8 billion. That's profit. That's take-home money. That's not even EBITDA. So a lot of money. That's more than any Hollywood studio is making. At this point, we'll see what Disney comes with in a couple of weeks, but certainly tops any Hollywood studio at this point, including Disney with the theme parks. So,
what about you, Natalie? What are your takeaways?
I'm still having a hard time with them not reporting subscriber numbers.
I'm with you. I'm still with you. The pain is real, Natalie. Yes.
It's such an important number. It has been for so many years that I've written about Netflix that my brain has not tuned away from that yet, but I'll get there. Yeah, I thought that they projected confidence in their year and stability, which is really important right now. And, that's going to set an important tone for the rest of earnings season that I know you'll be watching out for, Sean. So So, I think it's what they needed to do was come out and, kind of just, it's business as usual. And by the way, it's a really big business.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, that stability was, you could tell they were all about the nothing's changed, it's business as usual when it comes to price changes, when it comes to member retention, against this backdrop of market turmoil, economic turmoil that we've seen these past few weeks, this past month, a couple of weeks heading into upfronts. But Ted Sarandos was all about like, hey, entertainment is what people value during a recession. So we're not changing anything in our forecast here.
Yeah, pretty solid. I mean, they were asked about all those questions, Elaine, the advertising market, subscriber, they said, we're not really seeing anything. And they were even slightly optimistic about, about the ad market. And then they always stress it's, not a material part of their business, the revenue, so forth and so on. Still no insights into how much the ad business, comprises their revenue. They just introduced their new tech stack in the US April 1. So they're excited to be all the new capabilities. So they're saying we can offer more for advertisers. So people are, they're not having any of that problem where, again, when you go into linear TV and the legacy businesses where you're just trying to the audiences are kind of dwindling and you're trying to maintain audience, and that, is much more in danger. So they were not seeing anything there. As subscribers, we don't know, but the revenue was up in that direction. The only thing, they were saying was the kind of extra member aspect is not really material or not a major driver for their business. So that was the thing when they were doing the subscriber crackdown. Elaine was like, oh, you can add people on, for $8 a month or whatever to your account. That doesn't seem to be like a real big thing that people are doing. But that was the only real thing that stood out to me at all, which is really not that much.
And when you're thinking about the impact of tariffs or possible tariffs,
right.
I mean, this is a company that doesn't operate in China. It's a pure play streamer. There's hardly any merchandise. Their merch is kind of more of like a novelty aspect of their business. So they don't traffic in physical goods much. When they say they're insulated to a lot of that, I mean, they're not wrong, right?
Well, I also think it's interesting that we're seeing the payoff of them launching this lower priced ad tier. They now can kind of come to the street and say, look, like we're insulated in part because we've got all these different price points. And if people need to drop down to a lower tier, they can. It doesn't necessarily sound like that's happened a ton yet, but, that's certainly something that they can point to project stability.
Yeah.
Certainly also kind of trying to have it both ways of, well, we hardly have an ad business, so this isn't something that's necessarily impacted, but also look at this great growing blossoming ad business of the coin
there. Yeah, exactly.
But on that note, we're going to stop for a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to talk about, more Netflix and how they're going to take on YouTube. We'll be back in a moment.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Hi, I'm Eric Barmack, and I'm a working producer, and I write the Real AI newsletter for The Ankler. Real AI is your destination to understand the truth about AI and entertainment, who's using it, how they're using it, and the technological change already here in the industry. I care about AI because it's changed the way I run my own business and even pitch and sell shows. I've used AI for script coverage, to help my team brainstorm concepts, and even to come up with pitch decks. Real AI will also tell you more about the fast-moving technology that studios and streamers are tracking and how that will impact your job both today and tomorrow. I believe being informed is the only way to face the new frontier right here at our doorstep, which I believe can help foster the best in our human creativity, something that can never be replaced. Real AI comes out every other Tuesday as part of a paid subscription to The Ankler, so please join me by subscribing at theankler.com today.
All right, welcome back to the Ankler podcast, where we're talking about Netflix and its Q1 earnings. Natalie, they got a question about how they're going to compete with YouTube. and whether they might start putting video podcasts on the platform. It feels like a little bit like they're getting some heat about what to do with user-generated content, with things that are produced outside of the legacy Hollywood system.
Absolutely. I mean, I think this is a conversation that people have been having around Netflix and how it competes with YouTube for a while, but that I think is only getting bigger. Notably, though, I feel like they kind of downplayed the competition with YouTube. First, in the shareholder letter, they didn't mention YouTube by name at all. And in the competition section, they managed to find the one graph of TV viewing in the UK where Netflix has a larger share of viewing than YouTube.
Yeah.
That was definitely interesting. And then when asked about YouTube during the call, as Sean mentioned, they instead decided to focus on the share of TV viewing outside of Netflix and YouTube, and that being a growth area.
80%.
Yeah. Exactly, which is a lot. There's absolutely room to grow. And, YouTube and Netflix can coexist. And I think that was kind of their point. But I did appreciate something that Ted Sarandos said on the call, which was, that they're looking for the next generation of great creators, and they're looking everywhere. I do think that they acknowledge that not every creator, not every future filmmaker or box office director is going to come from film school, that there are lots of different avenues that creatives can now come up through. And that was interesting and certainly speaks to some of the deals that they've done with Ms. Rachel and The Sidemen and, a few other creators that they pointed out in their calls. They're keeping their eyes open on how they can bring more of that content to their platform.
Yeah, Ms. Rachel still dominating the charts over at Netflix for basically a repackaged YouTube video. And Natalie, you've written a little bit about the kids space and the preschool set lately.
Yeah, I wrote a story this week about a new Nickelodeon series called Kid Cowboy that's being debuted exclusively on YouTube, which I think is pretty interesting for a legacy entertainment company like Paramount, which owns Nickelodeon. So absolutely, I think everyone is recognizing YouTube as a really powerful platform to launch new IP, to build the next, Paw Patrol, the next, the next CoComelon, which started on YouTube. And Netflix sees that too. And that's why I think they've gone about licensing CoComelon and licensing Ms. Rachel. And it makes a lot of sense. What's so remarkable about the Ms. Rachel deal, and I think we've talked about this before, Sean, is just the fact that this is all programming that already exists on YouTube.
You can watch it for free right now.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's just been repackaged, slightly different format. And, boom, it's incredibly popular on Netflix.
Well, how much does that speak to YouTube's delivery system versus Netflix's, right? I mean, part of the reason why I think YouTube originated shows like CoComelon and Ms. Rachel do well on Netflix is because it's part of this curated environment. I mean, I know as a parent, I'm always a little wary of going down the YouTube rabbit hole. I know there are some guardrails they've put up, but it's still kind of dicey, especially if you have autoplay on and you just don't know what kind of random user-generated content is going to pop up next. I think there's something to be said about the safety of having pre-approved YouTube videos in a streaming provider that already.
Yeah, and Netflix does a great job of promoting its new shows to its users. It can be right there when you open up the app, whatever new thing they want to promote to you. And, on the kids experience, which I'm somewhat familiar with in my house, they absolutely are constantly surfacing new shows, that they think will like to watch based on, past viewing. So that's absolutely helped, a Ms. Rachel be successful on that platform.
And they also talked a little bit about animated franchises. Like Ted had mentioned, how well Leo, that Adam Sandler movie, also very funny, how well that did. Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, and that they're going to make some and license some is what they said. And that they have a lot of quote unquote promising originals that we're going to expect through 2027. And I know Netflix animation had been sort of a question mark over the last couple of years. And it sounds like they're looking to really capitalize on that market now.
Yeah, I mean, and I cover this every week and I do the top 9 Netflix film chart every week. It's studio animation that dominates all this viewing. And, Netflix, Leo was a big hit. But what did Netflix do there? They did an off-channel proper marketing campaign for that movie. That was a real, quote unquote, real movie marketing launch. Obviously, Adam Sandler, you had a lot of things going for it, Elaine, which,
But they spent money on the marketing. I remember at the LA Zoo when Leo came out, there was a giant Leo lizard-shaped slide at the entrance of the LA Zoo. They actually thought about how to reach that audience.
Plenty of ads and football and TV, so and that, paid off dividends. And that movie, even on Netflix, most films on Netflix, when they premiere, they maybe, if they stay on the top 10 chart for 5 weeks, that's very, very good. This was staying on for, I think, 9 or 10. It had a real long run Even the they dropped the biannual data dumps now. And if you go back in there, Leo still does have a very, very high rewatch rate. So again, that's what I've been curious is that they haven't really. Leo was November 23, I think. So they haven't
Something
really, done that again. They had the Spellbound movie, which I think wasn't that great, which came out, I think, in November from Skydance Animation. But, so they have to, that's what I'm curious of what they're going to do, because that was such a great success story, Elena, and nothing else they've done animation-wise has really caught on anywhere near that level of success. So they're still taking their shots, and even Ted mentioned, it was 9 of the top 10 movies are animated movies, on Netflix. And those aren't Netflix movies; those are studio movies. So he didn't mention that
when
part.
you say like Boss Baby or Minions or those things, charting all licensed content.
Me, exactly. So we'll see what the animated stuff does. They have a lot in the pipeline coming out, so we'll see if they kind of bring that level up in or what their tactic is there.
Well, I thought was interesting that, Ted did still acknowledge that they want to keep licensing animation.
Yes,
so,
yes.
I think this is a rare case where they kind of admitted, we're still early at this. We've had some hits, we've had some misses, and the licensed animation content is still doing really well. So just because they're, investing in, their own original animation doesn't mean they will back away from that licensed content.
Yeah, and that's a great point in the sense that Netflix is not just all Netflix content. Like, the success of Netflix, it relies on this stuff. I mean, Ms. Rachel, that's licensed. They don't own Ms. Rachel. All this stuff, WWE, they don't own this.
Well, as a volume player, you have to be okay with that, right? About having an amount of license, because it can't all be originals. You can't be super curated in an Apple TV Plus fashion, if you're going to be a cable replacement.
Well, to that point, I was kind of surprised by the lack of kind of big originals that launched in Q1 that were mentioned in the earnings report today. Adolescence is the big one.
Yeah.
But outside of that, WWE obviously got a mention, a different kind of, quote, original for Netflix.
Sure.
But the other ones were Back in Action, which was the Cameron Diaz movie, Counterattack. I hadn't really seen much conversation about that. I just thought that was interesting. In Netflix, it used to be that there were reliably a handful of kind of big originals every quarter that they could point to. And this quarter felt maybe a little bit soft on that. Certainly with Adolescence still being kind of such a big hit for them that, perhaps that kind of dominated the conversation.
What else did well for them? Running Point, did they mentioned that too, right?
They did, yes.
That was in there as well. Yeah, I'm trying to
the Kate Hudson basketball
show.
Yeah, that was a big one for them. We talked about the Sidemen a little bit. They released the second season of their show Inside, which the numbers I felt kind of small to me.
Very low. Yeah, it was like 2 million or something like that, I think, in the report. Is that what it was?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So now, obviously, second quarter, they're going to have season 2 of Squid Game, or, maybe right after the end of the second quarter. I think it's right on that kind of bubble.
I think it's in June, yeah.
And they're feeling pretty bullish about Q2.
Yeah. And Pop the Balloon, Natalie. I was not aware of this. Were you aware of Pop the Balloon, Natalie?
Yes, because fans of Pop the Balloon are not happy with Pop the Balloon on Netflix.
Really? Oh,
yes,
well, please do tell.
I haven't investigated fully all of their concerns, but I think there was a feeling that it just wasn't necessarily kind of true to the original format and premise.
So this, to those who don't know, this is a YouTube series. It's a dating thing with a balloon with 2 people.
The premise sounded weird and crazy.
Yeah, but they brought it to live on Netflix every once. What day of the week it is? Once a week. It's a live thing on Netflix now that they just started. Natalie, is what this thing is. So
yes, it's a live dating show, and they switched things up. The creator, who's the host of the show, is not the host of the Netflix show. So I think that perhaps is one reason that fans of the original didn't love it as much as Netflix was hoping. So it'll be interesting to see if they try to make any adjustments and try to find ways to entice fans of that premise to come back to it, or if they just say, okay, this was an experiment that didn't really work.
But Netflix, again, like evidence, again, they're trying stuff, and that's, whether it works or not, we'll see how it goes out. But again, from this, that, again, you mentioned like not big titles, but Pop the Balloon, Ms. Rachel, Tony Hinchcliffe also just dropped his first comedy special with them too, so like, and Ted mentioned those on the call as well. So like, again, that's all in succession here. So they are trying these things. Natalie, he's also asked about video podcasts, and he was pretty open to that notion of just saying the quality is improved or, professional grade, where that may be something that we may now see too, of like, podcasts or talk shows that are on YouTube coming to Netflix too. So
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up podcasts because that is an area that I think we'll see Netflix play a lot more in the months and years ahead. And they were very candid about that. The line is getting really blurry between a podcast and a talk show, especially when you add, video into the mix. Ted also touted the original podcasts that Netflix produces and releases across all major podcast platforms. So, that would be interesting to track too, is if they try to turn any of their kind of original podcast concepts into, Netflix series or shows. But yes, I think we can safely assume that they are keeping a close tabs on, the podcasts, the video podcasts that are performing well on Spotify, on YouTube. And if there's an option to do a Ms. Rachel style licensing deal or something, you better believe that they'll find a way to do it.
Yeah.
And, you're talking about that blurred line between video pods and talk shows. I mean, Netflix is also doing some interesting things with talk shows. When you look at Everybody's Live with John Mulaney, it's like it wouldn't be a huge stretch to think of Netflix then tooling around with video pods and mixing up the talk show format a little more.
Are either of you guys watching Everybody's Live?
On and off. I love John Mulaney. I have not been tuning in as regularly as I want to, though. Have you been watching it live?
Yes, I watched, and last night in particular, I thought was a pretty successful version of the show.
Was Letterman on that one?
Letterman was on, Nikki Glazer. It was a good lineup, and he had a whole premise where he basically assembled men of every height from 5 feet to 7 feet, and it was pretty fun. I mean, such a silly, simple premise to anchor an entire hour of live TV, but I thought it was really well done, and certainly a kind of a sign of where he can take the show going forward.
Yeah. Well, to round out today's episode, we're being treated to another famous, or should I say infamous, Sean McNulty pop quiz. And in keeping with today's theme, it's about Netflix, right, Sean? So there's actually a modicum of a chance that I'll do okay at this one.
Well, we've already mentioned one of the things that's going to be in it here. So it relates back to, Natalie, your comment about, kind of the scripted things not being maybe a heavy Q1 for them in terms of, the amount of hits there. And movies, I did an analysis this week in the Wake Up. Just, I track the movie chart every week and I'm looking at it and I'm like, there's really not a lot of new movies coming. They're usually, pretty every other week or something like that. And of course, we're looking at, Dan Lynn's been in the job now for his 1 year anniversary was April. And, looking for signs of what the new era is, the old era. There's a lot of things when he came in and what they're going to do. And, maybe fewer movies was, higher quality were things that were thrown around. So I went in and counted and, they only had 5 original live action English language original films in the first 16 weeks of the year. Last year it was 10 and in 2023 it was 9. So the dialing down, you could say that, the strikes certainly may be playing a small role in here potentially, kind of overflow from that possibly. But I wanted to see, can you name me the 5 films that Netflix has released, the most popular streaming platform in America since to date? This is since January 1 here.
Back in action, but only because
I was going to say, that's the one Natalie named. So that one was already it. So this is more, I think Natalie, you'll probably know more of this. That was by Elaine. She may not know any of them. National know one, Back in Action. So Elaine, the puck is over to you.
No, I just said it. I answered first.
You got it. All right, you get 1, Elaine. Fine. Natalie, the other 4? Can you name me any of the other 4?
I mean, was Counterattack a movie or a TV show?
Counterattack unfortunately, it's a Mexican film, so it does not count as English language. So it was very popular, but it's made in Mexico, so that doesn't count on my list. This is American.
Wait, when did that TSA movie come out? No, that was last.
Carry On was December. That does not count.
Okay.
Yeah, no. Natalie, anything?
No, this is terrible.
All right.
Gosh.
No Googling, Natalie. I see your fingers moving. No, that's it. No cheating on this. That's it. Hands up, everybody.
I don't like to fail exams, Sean.
This is why we have the video component of the pod to keep us honest.
All right. Well, I'll give you one which you will know that The Electric State was one. So that one you've heard
right.
of.
It only cost $300 million. We should have remembered that one.
That one, I thought you might have. The other 3, these feel like maybe Elaine movies. I don't know. With La Dolce Vita with Scott Foley.
Sure.
Nothing on
that.
Okay, got it. We have Kind of Pregnant.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Amy Schumer?
All right, we have some recognition. Okay. And then The Life List, which is the latest film.
Yes, I've actually been hearing about The Life
know
List.
This one. Sophia
Well, this
Carson.
one is this one is big on social too, because
Yes.
it's prompted a lot of people to create their own life lists. So I've been seeing that trend. The problem, Sean, is that I don't think in quarterly earnings terms in my own brain.
This is the year to date. This isn't by the quarter. This was the year to date. So I thought that was a fair assessment. So, but this year, all right, well, give me 5 films that came out in movie theaters this year. I bet you can name me 5.
Oh,
Fine.
Black Bag. I saw that one in theaters.
Hey, look at that. Look at you. Soderbergh. Very nice. See?
The Minecraft movie.
Minecraft,
Yeah. See? Yeah.
Dog Man.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, we're off the tongue here. So, marketing matters, guys. It is what it is.
Can name you all the children's movies that came out.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Not the murder movies. No, the horror movies the 10 horror movies we've had this year, Elaine does not know. But yeah, exactly. So anyway, there you go. That's your pop quiz.
That's the end of the torture? Okay.
That was a quick one. I told you a quick one this week. So
All right. I'm going to study up next time, Sean. I'll be more prepared.
that's the whole point,
I
is not to
thought-
be prepared.
I thought you were going to ask us about what was their free cash flow in Q4 of 2018.
If you'd like me to do
I think
that,
I would have had a
Elaine,
better
I
chance
can-
at that one.
Is that right? Yeah, right. Exactly. Elaine did the homework on that, not on the movies. She's like, oh man, I did the wrong
Damn
one.
it.
Yeah, operating margin. Terrible.
All right. Well, that's a wrap for this week's episode of the Ankler Podcast. Make sure you're all going to theankler.com to sign up for our newsletters and podcasts here. Just enter your email address on the site. And if you have any feedback for us, we love to hear what you think about the pod. Leave us a rating and a review anywhere you get your podcasts. It also helps the show grow, helps us reach new people. And make sure you're following The Ankler on socials at The Ankler. Thanks again to Sean and Natalie for joining us today. And of course, a special thanks to all of you for listening. We'll see you next time.